What is up, everyone? My name is Joseph and welcome to this video. Now, how hard is getting a sub 1 minute kill at Vorkath? This was something that I kind of thought a lot about during my previous video while making my previous video, the Bossing Till Broke Vorkath video. And I kind of wanted to explore that in the confines of that video, but in the end decided that it probably wasn't within the scope. In that video, I did want to personally learn the boss to the best of my ability and kind of perfect it as much as I could. But I decided that that video was more of a loot video and more of a loot tab style. And I did have some milestones or some goals set up that in my mind would show me that I was decent at the boss or I was improving at the boss. And some of those milestones included learning to attack walk or wooks walk. One of them was getting a 6-kill trip. And one of them originally was getting a sub 1 minute kill. About halfway through, I decided that the sub 1 minute kill just didn't fit within the scope of the video. It was too grindy. I would have had to spend too much money on gear in order to make it happen. And there wasn't a lot of profit that would have been generated from it because I knew that it was fairly RNG dependent and I'd have to teleport out and then respec, run back, all of those different things. And I just didn't think it fit within the previous video, but I still did want to go for it. So after that video edited, after I got that uploaded, I decided to shift my focus and actually try to grind out a sub 1 minute kill. Now, I did a lot of this on stream, actually. If you're not already following my stream and you do enjoy the content that I make, I think you'll really enjoy the streams over at twitch.tv/JosephsPlace. If you enjoy this video and the style of content that I make here, a lot of it carries over to the streams. We have a lot of similar conversations there, and I talk a lot about the same thing. So if you do end up liking this video, go ahead and follow that there. But after trying for a few hours to get a sub 1 minute kill on stream and going through a few different builds and a few different pieces of equipment, I kind of wanted to just outline what I went through and the numbers that I came up with, the calculations that I ran in order to pick one piece of gear over another piece of gear, and wanted to just make a video kind of documenting all of that. And that's what this video is. If you don't care about the middle part and you really just want to see what it takes to get a sub 1 minute kill on Vorkath, jump to the timestamp on screen and that'll take you right towards the part where all of those numbers are run. But if you're interested in the whole process, stick around. I think some of you may find it interesting. I found it interesting going through it as I was, and I think some of you might find the thought process a little bit interesting as well. But what I want to focus on in this video is kind of talking about some of the accuracy percentages, for example, for the Dragon Warhammer versus the Bandos Godsword, why I used one over the other, why I swapped back to the other one, and why I used certain pieces of equipment, how Ruby bolt specs work, and how all of that ties together in order to get a sub 1 minute kill. But that is enough of an introduction. Let's get into the first set of gear that I used while trying to get a sub 1 minute kill at Vorkath. So the first setup I used, or the first set of equipment I used, is nothing out of the ordinary. I used Elite Void for both melee and range, and I decided to use a Dragon Warhammer for the spec. One thing that I did want to try out with these first few attempts was Vengeance. I figured any amount of DPS I could get, any extra DPS I could get was going to be helpful. So I wanted to try out Vengeance and see if that helped or hurt me. I didn't see why it would hurt me. Maybe taking some extra damage would cause me to eat and lose a little bit of DPS, but I felt it was worth a try. Now, I did know going into this that a lot of what goes into a sub 1 minute kill is RNG, but I don't think I was really prepared for how much RNG really plays a factor into it, and you'll see why throughout this entire video. But let's specifically look at why I chose this gear specifically. So I did use a Dragon Hunter crossbow. I was able to afford that, but I am using just a regular anti-Dragonfire shield, and that comes into play later. But the spec weapon I decided to use was a Dragon Warhammer. Now, the reason I used the Dragon Warhammer is because 2 successful Dragon Warhammer hits lowers Vorkath's defense by 109. Now, you'll see a lot of people who don't use the Dragon Hunter crossbow use a Bandos Godsword to lower Vorkath's defense, and in general, that does have its benefits, but I wanted to start with a Dragon Warhammer because in total, if you hit both specs, you are guaranteed a very high level of defense reduction compared to the Bandos Godsword, which is more for consistent kills. So off the bat, I really was planning for a short experience. I actually thought I would get this relatively quickly. I didn't do too much upfront planning, and I was foolish enough to think that I'd get this fairly quickly. So I decided to go for a Dragon Warhammer and then just teleport out of any kill that I didn't get both specs on. Now, unfortunately, what I did not look up is the percentages or the accuracy percentage on the Dragon Warhammer. So for those of you who don't know, what the Dragon Warhammer special attack does is it lowers your opponent's defense level by 30% of its current defense. So it doesn't matter how high you hit. You could hit a 1, you could hit a 50. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you actually hit the monster. So the only thing I'm going to focus on right now is the accuracy percentages of the Dragon Warhammer special attacks. So the first special attack with the gear I was using, with a super combat potion and with piety active, I had a 38.79% chance to hit. So 38, almost a 39% chance. Now the second Dragon Warhammer hit had a little bit of a higher percent chance to hit since the defense had already been lowered by the first spec, and the percentage for that one was 54.05, leaving a 20.09% chance of hitting both specs and reducing Vorkath's defense by 109. And this low percentage really started to become noticeable about 10 to 20 kills in, when I really wasn't hitting both the specs all too often, and only about 1 out of every 5 attempts. So this was really the first cue that I really needed to switch something up in terms of gear. Also, one thing that I did notice during this first round of attempts is that Vengeance does literally nothing. I don't know why. I didn't actually look into this very far because once I noticed that Vengeance does actually no damage to Vorkath, I just dropped it. But that was something that I noticed. Again, I didn't do much upfront research because I didn't think I needed to off the bat going for this goal. But Vengeance does not do any damage to Vorkath, at least for the tests that I used. I went in there with no anti-Dragonfire shield, no anti-fire protection, took a full hit, and the Vengeance did not return any damage to Vorkath. So I decided to drop both of those. Now, the original plan with Vengeance was that I was going to tank a freeze hit. So when Vorkath freezes you and spawns a zombie spawnling, I was just going to tank that hit. And I had specifically an angler in my inventory to heal up over max HP so that the damage wasn't going to make me lose DPS in the middle phases by having to eat. So that was kind of my plan for dealing with that. But in the end, Vengeance did not do much, so I decided to drop it and then just go back to the normal Crumble Undead build with a standard spellbook. But after a few times, probably about 20 attempts, I decided I need to change things up a little bit. This is really where I actually realized that Vengeance does nothing, and where I realized that the Dragon Warhammer accuracy was just not high enough. So I decided to change just a few small things to make it a little bit easier on myself. So like I said, the first thing that I did was just completely drop Vengeance, go back to the standard spellbook, and pick up Crumble Undead for the zombie spawnling. The second thing I did is I switched up some of my gear to give me more crush accuracy. Since I wasn't really thinking about it too much at the start, strength bonus does not really matter for the Dragon Warhammer, since the only thing that matters is you hit. Anything. You could hit a 1, you could hit your max hit, it doesn't matter. As long as it hits, it lowers the opponent's defense. So I figured going for a better crush accuracy percentage or better crush accuracy stat would help more than a fire cape and a berserker ring. So I swapped out my cape for a myth's cape, and I swapped out my ring from a berserker ring to a treasonous ring. And that did give me quite a bit more crush accuracy, but I very quickly realized and then ran the numbers on it. It really didn't do too much in the grand scheme of things. It brought the first accuracy percentage up from 38.79 up to only 38.97, and the second hit up from 54.05 up to 54.26, bringing the total percentage chance to hit both specs to 21.14. So the extra crush accuracy really didn't do a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. So I quickly realized after like 10 attempts that it just wasn't really making any bit of a noticeable difference. So that was the second gear setup I had. I was able to consistently get quick kills with this, and by quick I mean probably about a minute 30, consistently decent kill speeds. And that was mainly because I was lowering Vorkath's defense, which wasn't something I was doing previously. So these kills did seem like I was doing them faster, but I wasn't able to push really fast kills. So I decided to change things up a little bit more with my third and final set of gear. So the third set of gear is where I really started to look into the numbers and optimize the gear that I was using in order to try to push and shave as much time off of my kills as possible. So I did, not drastically, but I did switch out a few items. The main ones being I swapped my Dragon Warhammer for a Bando's Godsword and my anti-Dragonfire shield for the Dragonfire Ward. And I did a few other things too. I tried to boost up my strength bonus, so I reverted the mythical cape back to the fire cape and the ring back to the berserker ring in order to get the most strength bonus. Since we were going with the Bandos God Sword now, the Bandos God Sword reduces your opponent's defense based on how high you hit, so I did think the strength bonus was definitely worth it. So I swapped out those items and started to go back in for some kills, and I noticed that my kills were speeding up a little bit. However, this was probably just mostly due to the fact that I was just killing the boss more times. So let's look at the percentages or the accuracy percentages for the Bandos God Sword before we go any farther. So the Bandos God Sword, the special attack, like I said, lowers your opponent's defense based on how hard you hit, but it also does give you extra accuracy when you're speccing. So the accuracy with this gear on my first Bandos God Sword spec was 73.83. And the average hit, if you succeed, so if you actually hit him, the average hit was going to be around 36 to 37. And that brings the second Bandos God Sword spec to have a chance of 77.59 with almost the same exact max hit, the same exact average hit. It varies a little bit. I was messing around with switching attack styles, so switching from accurate to aggressive to see if I could get one extra max hit, but all it does is just that. It increases your max hit by 1, so the average hit really doesn't change too much. But that gives you an average of 57.28% to hit both your specs with an average hit of 74, an average total of 74, which is a higher percentage and a higher defense reduction than the single Dragon Warhammer spec, and you'll have this happen over half the time. So you have a 57% chance to lower an average of 74 defense, where with the Dragon Warhammer, you have like a 38% chance to lower 64 and a 21% chance to lower at the full 109. So what the Bandos God Sword allows you to do is just get in there and kill the boss more times. And I was realizing that this is kind of what I had to do. I was starting to realize more around this time that I really did need to rely on RNG and lucky hits. So only killing the boss 20% of the time or 21% of the time just wasn't giving me enough opportunities to get good luck. So being able to kill the boss 57% of the time and still be relatively efficient was just giving me more chances to get lucky. And while this did help, this did give me some faster kills. I'd get, 111, 110, even 109 was my best. It really wasn't pushing me closer to the 1 minute mark. And because of that, I started looking into the one thing I hoped I wouldn't have to deal with, and that's the Ruby Bolt specs. Now, the reason I didn't want to look into these specifically is because there's not a lot I can do about making these more common. I already have the Candor and Hard Diaries done, which gives you a more increased chance to hit your bolt specs, so to hit your enchanted bolt specs. So I had that all done, so I already had that bonus chance from that, but there was really nothing else I could do in order to increase the chance of the Ruby Bolts. For those of you who don't know, the Ruby Bolt spec hits a percentage of your opponent's current health as damage, and it's capped at 100. So if your opponent has 100 health, it hits 20% of that. So it hits a 20 automatically, no more, no less. And if they have any more, then I think the number is 500. So if you hit a 500, you would hit 100. If you hit 600, you would technically hit more than 100, but it caps out at 100. So even though 20% of 600 is over 100, you're stuck at the 100. That's where the cap is. So that's what the spec does, just for those of you who don't know. And there was nothing I could really do in order to get this spec to trigger more often. So I was really hoping I wouldn't have to look this deep into the numbers and figure out what the actual percentage is. But I did. I did end up having to, because I just wasn't able to get close enough to the 1 minute to really justify continuing on. And keep in mind, around this time, I had a few hours of attempts in with about 50 total kills and probably about 100 attempts. I didn't kill every single attempt. I didn't kill Vorkath. I teleported out if I thought it was going slow or I didn't get the good specs. So let's just say I attempted this about 100 times and I wasn't getting close, and I really didn't have any that seemed that they would push me past that 1 minute or under the 1 minute mark. Again, the closest I got was 1 minute and 9 seconds. So I started to look into the bolts. So the first thing I found out was the average kill speed. So what the average kill time will be for each Vorkath. If you don't get unlucky, you don't get lucky. And that average time is based on a few things. So the average Ruby Bolt hit and the average Diamond Bolt hit. So the current meta is to use your Ruby Bolts until Vorkath gets to around 35 to 40% HP, and then swap to your Diamond Bolts, because the Ruby Bolt specs won't really do too much. They'll actually do lower than what your average hit would be normally without a spec, so it's not worth using them. So to get Vorkath to 35% HP with my gear and my stats, it took an average of 14 hits. based on the DPS. So 14 attacks with a Dragon Hunter crossbow, and with its attack speed, that takes 42 seconds. Then after that, in order to get it from 0% from 35% down to 0%, it'll take an average of 8 attacks with Dragon Diamond Bolts Enchanted, or 24 seconds. And this brings the average kill time to 1 minute and 6 seconds. However, there are a few special phases on Vorkath that greatly reduce your DPS. One being the ice phase that just completely freezes you for about 7 to 8 seconds. And the other being the poison phase, where you can still attack him, but it does half the damage. And this phase lasts for about twice that length. So if you think about it, you're really losing 8 seconds of DPS every time there's a special phase. And the special phases occur about every 21 seconds, so every 7 attacks from Vorkath. So every 21 seconds, you're losing about 8 seconds worth of DPS, which brings the total kill time, or the total average kill time, up to almost exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds. Obviously, it varies a little bit depending on your stats and your gear and all that, but that's what it was for what I was doing. So if we look at it this way, we can see that we need to shave off 30 seconds off of our average kill time. So I started looking into the Ruby Bolt specs and seeing how much time each of those specs saved. So if you get full effectiveness out of a Ruby Bolt spec on Vorkath, it will hit a 100. However, once Vorkath goes below 66% HP, or about 500 HP, you'll start not getting full effectiveness out of those bolts. You'll start hitting under 100. So if you swap your bolts at around 35 to 40%, that means the lowest maximum hit you'll get from your Ruby Bolt spec is around 60, which means your average bolt spec is going to be around 80 HP. You're going to do about 80 damage on average with each Ruby Bolt spec. And based on what the DPS spreadsheet that I was using told me, and I'll leave a link for that spreadsheet in the description, based on what that was telling me, my average hit was a little bit under 80, so it was about 37, which means each special attack on average, each Ruby Bolt spec on average, will be just over 2 effective hits. And since the speed of the Dragon Hunter crossbow on rapid is 5 ticks or 3 seconds, it will save you on average just over 3 seconds per Ruby Bolt spec. So in order to get that time down, we needed to spec multiple times. And there's a lot of variables that go into this. You can't just straight subtract that off of 130 because you might be able to skip a phase, or you might get lucky with some other hits. So I decided to just try out 4. How much time would 4 special attacks save me? So I decided to start looking into this. So since each Ruby Bolt spec takes the place of 2 hits, so you attack once and it's effectively 2 attacks, you don't really have 14 attacks to get Vorkath down to 35% HP, like I'd mentioned before. I mentioned before that on average, it takes me 14 attacks to get him down to 35% HP. But since each spec is counted as 2, we only have 10 if we're using 4 specs as an example. So 4 specs are actually 8 attacks. So we only have 10 total attacks, including the specs, to get Vorkath from 100% HP to 35% HP. And this will save you about 12 to 13 seconds. Now, that's not enough to get the kill time from 1 minute 30 down to 59 seconds or even 1 minute. However, what this will help you do is push you to a little bit of a faster kill, so you might not get that second special phase, or you might kill Vorkath before that second special phase. So I decided to use 4 specs as the example and really see what the percentage chance is that we'd get 4 specs within those 10 attacks. And if I plugged in the values to the equation that I used correctly, the percentage of getting these 4 Ruby Bolt specs within your first 10 attacks is very, very low. The chance is actually 0.264%, which is about 1 opportunity every 400 kills, which is not high at all. But keep in mind that this is only for 4 specs that only saves you about 12 to 13 seconds. In order to actually still get that sub 1 minute kill, you need to be lucky on the rest of your attacks, not just lucky enough to get those 4 specs. You need to hit above average on every single other of your attacks. You actually need to hit an average of 15 to 20 damage higher than your average hit, which is not incredibly unlikely. You need to hit about a 50 instead of an average of 37. So it's not super unlikely, but it's not average. You still need to be a little bit lucky in order for that to happen. or maybe just get one extra spec and save you one more attack, but that brings the percentage down quite a bit more. The percentage chance of getting 5 specs within those first few attacks is even lower, obviously, than 4. So not only do you only have a 0.264% chance of getting those 4 specs, but you also have to hit a little bit higher than your average hit in order to push yourself to the sub 1 minute kill. And in the end, I wasn't able to do this. I only put about 100 attempts into this before I started looking into the numbers, and I started working on something else. But I wasn't able to make the conditions meet. I wasn't able to have all those conditions that would allow me to get that sub 1 minute kill. When I started out for this goal, I really did it because I wanted to show to myself that I had a high proficiency, or I at least knew this boss to a semi-high proficiency, and I saw a sub 1 minute kill as kind of the pinnacle of that. However, as I looked into it and as I had attempts on the boss, it really just showed me that this is almost purely luck-based. Yes, there is an element of skill to it, but the element of skill is you have to do this boss perfectly until you get that 0.26% chance to be able to get the sub 1 minute kill. And honestly, I didn't have the time to do that right now. Now, I still do plan on trying to get the sub 1 minute kill in the future. I enjoy Vorkath as a boss and as a money-making method, so I'll definitely be back here because I have many other reasons I'll need to make money in the future. However, I just didn't have the time to do it right now, but I did want to make this video just to kind of share this information with you guys. I found it interesting as I started to look into it and as I started to research it, and I thought maybe someone else out there would find it interesting as well. So while this isn't just a progress video of me getting a sub 1 minute kill, or isn't even me getting the sub 1 minute kill, I thought maybe the data and the information behind all of this was interesting, and I thought maybe again someone out there would find it interesting as well. So if you made it to this point in the video, I'm going to assume that you did enjoy it to at least some extent. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If this is something you enjoy, I wouldn't mind producing this type of analytical content on different parts of the game. Not something I would do often, but something in a situation like this, I don't mind putting together the data and the information and putting a video out there. So if it's something that you would like, if it's a type of content that you enjoy, let me know. It's not something I've really seen too much of. Maybe because nobody's interested, or maybe just because I'm not looking in the right places. But again, if it is something that you would like to see more of, I may consider doing more of this style. Rarely, but I may consider it in the future. But that is all I have for this video. Again, I hope you guys did enjoy it, and I hope it did entertain you at least a little bit. Thank you guys so much for spending a little bit of your time watching this video and spending it with me here today. Again, if you want to follow my stream, link is in the description. I talk about this type of stuff, maybe not as in depth, a lot on my stream. So if you want to come hang out, I stream regularly. Link again is in the description. But that is all I have for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.